Hello, fearless listeners. Welcome to Let Fear Bounce, the weekly podcast that brings you inspiration and motivation and a nugget of hope. Join me, Kim Lengling, as I chat with awesome guests from all walks of life who share how they have conquered their fears. So get ready, my friends, to be empowered to let your own fears bounce. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Let Fear Bounce. I am Kim Lengling, your host, and I am so glad that you are deciding to spend just a small part of your day with myself today and my special guest, Candace MacPhie. Now, she was born in Montreal, Quebec, and she spent years backpacking and working around the world. She has a Bachelor of Commerce degree and an MBA, and she worked for 20 years on 4 different continents, and she now calls Calgary, Alberta, home. During the lockdown, that's like when the world changed, folks. We all know when that happened. She had time on her hands and decided to try writing. And she began writing the Back in a Year series. So when she's not at her computer yelling, just a few more pages, then I'll make dinner. She loves hiking in the Rocky Mountains, swimming, reading romance novels, making up new cake recipes, and spending time with her hubby and her 3 kids. Candace, welcome to Let Fear Bounce.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So I had to chuckle. We were talking off mic before I hit that record button. I was telling her, folks, all you out there listening, I was telling her she is literally a doppelganger for a girl that I went to school with. I couldn't believe it. So I got her picture and I went, oh my gosh, Amy. So they say that we all have a double, and I found my friend's double here in Candace, but that has nothing to do with the show, but I still wanted to share.
Exactly.
So, okay, I'm intrigued. You have a couple of different degrees and, all this education, and you hadn't started writing until, COVID happened.
Right.
You spent years backpacking. Now, how did that come about? Like, did you just say, I'm going to go backpacking? How did you do that? How did you afford to live? Where did you go? And how come?
Yes. Okay. All good questions. So I grew up in Montreal, as you know, and I English speaker, and I don't know how familiar you are with the French culture in Quebec. It's not as very easy for an English speaker to find work in Quebec. So I did what quite a few of the English folks do and drove down the highway to Toronto, and I started working in Toronto. And yeah, so it was right after my mom died. I think that's all. There's always a turning point in your life, right? And that was it for me. So my mom got sick when I was 14. She died just before my 23rd birthday. And then I did the big move drove down the highway, went to Toronto, and tried to kind of cobble together a life for myself. But after such a long time of being a caregiver, and after such a long time of constantly looking after my mom and my family, I really didn't know myself. I didn't know what I wanted. Everything was just a slog. It was hard. Every day was just not a fun day,
Mhm.
And I decided to take, and this is the first part of the book. The first book called Finding Color. I decided to take a 3-week backpacking trip to Greece, just to say, okay, I'm going to just see if this can restart, sort of click into my life. And I just thought, okay, this is it. Me and my backpack and my travel guide, I'm doing it. And yeah, I had a great time. And I met someone on holiday who kind of inspired me to say, well, why aren't you living? If you always wanted to travel the world and see stuff, why aren't you doing it? And I was like, well, I have a job. And he said, yeah. And I said, well, I have a car. And he said, yeah. I said, I have an apartment. And he said, yeah. And I went, oh my God, I can do it. So I always wanted to travel. I always wanted to see the world. It just felt that after it's kind of the thing you do maybe after you finish school, but I had gotten a job, and then I was looking at it. Was just, I felt too old, to be honest. I was 20, 25, 26, and I thought, oh, that's kind of passed me by. Like, I'm kind of on a new track. But this person sort of said to me, no, if you want to do it. And that's what I did. I sold everything and left. And that's what this story is. This series is this time away, and all the crazy things that happen. And you really get immersed in not only the things that happened, but the time period and what it was like to travel in that time period. Everything from, I don't know, the expressions to, to the technology to, just how how traveling was at that point. And yeah, so that's what this is.
So how were you able to pay your way through your travels?
Well, I sold that car that I had. That was part of it. And then after my grandfather died, after my mom died, and left me a small, like, not, I don't know, I think it was $5,000 or $10,000. So it was enough to kind of say, okay, this is what I can do. So I worked along the way as well. You can get working holiday visas. So I had a working holiday visa for UK and one for Australia. And then I would just work and travel, work and travel. So I used a little bit of that car money and the grandfather money, and then go from there.
Just living a frugal life, you were able to do it then.
It was so frugal. Like, we were very diligent in terms of what we spent. And I would, if I could, it was always, it was an interesting time because I wasn't time bound. I left everything. I quit my job. I sold everything. I had no, I put things in my dad's basement that I just thought, well, we'll see what happens if I want those things when I get back. And it was just really kind of freeing experience. It's just what I had in my back and me, right? And I had no time constraints. So what I had was money constraints. So I had this much money, and I had to live the cheapest, most frugalist way. So the longest, cheapest route didn't matter because I wasn't on time crunch, or I would always travel third class, and I would always travel, take the bus instead of taking a taxi, and it would take longer, but I didn't have a time, like, I wasn't on the clock. So it's a very interesting way to live, rather than now, for example, it's okay, we have 2 week holiday. What can we slide into that 2 week holiday? Go, right? And it's all about the time crunch, where it was such an opposite experience then. And it was just, okay, the more I save each day adds just another day to the end of the trip. It's just another couple of cities I can see, or another place I can go. So,
What a freeing feeling that must have been, because I mean, most folks either can't or won't,
yeah.
or are fearful of doing something like that.
Yeah. And I know in terms of the money thing, so I definitely had a leg up. But if you didn't have that leg up and could afford, you'd have to get a plane ticket somewhere to say wherever you could go. There is definitely ways to, I had a girlfriend who traveled around Australia by cleaning hostels. She would stay at the hostel and she would clean it. And then she would take half her day to clean the hostel, and then she got free room and board, and then was able to tour around. So there's ways to do it even without a lot of money. You just have to manage your expectations in terms. And then, even when I would go to a city, it's not the world is your oyster. I'm gonna just go through all of the gamut. I would really study my tour book and be quite specific about what I wanted to see and how much that ate into the budget. And okay, well, I'm going to have a sandwich on the bench instead because I'm going to that museum, or however it worked out. So there was a lot of choices that were made just to make sure that I stuck to the budget. I was a bit anal about my budget. I had yes, as now people would have a much more elaborate system. I had a notebook in the back, and I would kind of try to track all my spend. But yeah, I was just really specific because it was so important to me to see as much as I could. And the only thing that was my constraint with that was money. And I just had to be really careful with it.
So when you began that journey, did you say, I'm going to do this for a year? Did you give yourself a time frame, or you just said, here I go?
Well, I also in the very first paragraph of first chapter, I say to my family, I'll be back in a year. So that's really where the series name came from. And my dad and my brother said, okay, yeah, sure, we'll see you. And I think they knew and I knew. I don't know when I'll be back. And technically, I didn't come back for 7 or 8 years. So yeah, it was a while. I landed in back in London. Anyways, it was a long time. By the time I finally came back to Canada and decided to sort of reintegrate into life, which is a whole other thing to talk about, just trying to be away that long and think, yay, I'm coming home. And it's not that easy. But
No,
yeah.
yeah, it would be because it would be completely different, well, almost a completely different world then, because
Well,
there
just
you are now
even
in one place again.
just trying to like just even at immigration when I had my passport and I said, well, are you even a thing here, and just
Right.
taxes and just trying to
Do
become
you
a
even belong here?
yes, exactly, like who are you, and I see what your passport says, but I don't know if you really belong here. Yeah, the culture reintegration was very difficult. Just it was so different than all the places where I was used to living, so yeah.
So on your travels, did you keep a notebook or a journal, and that's how the book came about?
Yes, yes. I was an avid journaler, and it really helped. Just from a healing perspective, a lot of this journey is about dealing with grief and dealing with just your emotions because everyone deals with grief differently. It's a very personal journey. It is the journey that it takes, right? And people take it. Some people just move along. Some people drag it out inside forever and never deal with it. But I didn't want to live that way anymore. I was so closed off, and I'm normally this person who's just like, "Yay, let's go!" And everything's super fun, and there's never a bad thing. We can always make it better. And it was so hard, and I just did not like not being me. And so that's what drove me to start to say, okay, I need to unpack this because I kept compartmentalizing and just shoving it down, going, okay, it'll be fine, it'll go away, it'll be fine, it'll go away. And that's what probably the first and second book deal with that more in terms of just with along with all of the adventures and stuff, but just deal with the unpacking of grief. It's not an easy thing to do. And then it was just about discovering, what I like, because a lot of those formative years where you're, saying, okay, I like this, I don't like that. And nobody really knows themselves for a while, but at least you have a chance to give things a go, right? I didn't really have that from 14. I was, as soon as I got my driver's license, I was driving my mom to the hospital. I was, doing my homework while she was getting chemo. And, it was all that. It was constantly that. And your whole world revolves around looking
Right.
after someone. And a lot of we did all the palliative care at home, and so there's a lot of complexities there, and it just doesn't leave a lot of time for yourself. So that's what this time was, and that's why it was so important to me just to stay out there. Plus, I just had this blocker. I did not want to go home. I am like, no matter what happens out here, no matter how many bad things, there was a lot of bad things or how many good things, I am not quitting. Like I need this. I need to do this. I've always wanted to do this. There was a few sort of um things that were brighter in my mind that absolutely had to happen, and absolutely had to see. Like I had to take a camel to the pyramids. Like that was no non-negotiable. That was something I had to do. And I had to go to Australia, and I had to, see the Sydney Harbor. I was just like, I just need to see the bridge. I need to see the Opera House. I need to, there were so many things that I need to see a kangaroo. There was just stuff that I I would have been so disappointed with myself if I didn't get done. So I just kept going.
Yeah, and what an amazing journey, by golly.
Mhm.
What an amazing experience that you were able to have, and that and that was, well, a bit of a grief journey, like you had said. And as you said, everybody grieves in a different way.
Mhm.
And there's no time frame,
Mhm.
even though people say, oh, it's been a year, or oh, it's
Yeah.
been 6 months. Don't listen to those people because everybody grieves differently and in your own time. And it's, how awesome that you had the opportunity, you were able to
Mhm.
to take this journey that you did for so long. And I can only assume you soaked up so much, and you've got books that you've written books about it now.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming there's probably little nuggets in there in your books that maybe give some insight into the grieving process, and that might be helpful to others that are grieving.
It is. It's not, it's funny. My goal was when I first started writing, I thought, okay, what do I want? What do I want to do? So I took this trip. Whoop-de-doo, right? Some cool stuff happened. Fair enough. But what was it that really happened? So for me, it was each book deals with its own sort of personal journey for it. What, to be honest, it happened so long ago. It was in the 90s. Like, geez, Louise, so long ago. It's almost like historical fiction, historical nonfiction at this point, right? So I'm such a different person that it feels like I'm writing about someone else because I'm so different now. And it's actually kind of fun because I can just really be quite vulnerable and quite open about the different experiences that I had, because it's just historical nonfiction, historical in this historical account, right?
Yeah, well, you were a different person then.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the things that happened, I was writing and going, oh, this is so terrible. What an idiot I was. And just, but that's what makes it good, right? It's all the stupid things that we do and all the crazy things that happen. So although it deals with, for example, the first chapter in chapter 1, I've had so many people write me and say, oh my God, in like 6 pages, you capture exactly how I feel in terms of having a recent loss, and you've just articulated how every day feels for me. And I went, wow. And I just keep reading and just keep going because it gets better, and
Right.
it's not without work. And people say, oh, time. And you go, yeah, time will do stuff, right? But
It does something.
it
Yes.
does something. Things go by and you go through all the firsts in terms of that first year, but it doesn't heal you unless you actually do whatever it is you need to do
Right.
to
I've
move
never understood that saying, or actually particularly cared for it. Time heals all wounds,
on.
because I don't agree.
No.
Time softens,
Hmm.
softens things as time goes by. You can look in your rearview mirror. Things become a little softer, not as harsh, not as dark, not as difficult. It softens it, but I don't think it heals. I think that comes from a completely different place.
I think so too. And I think without work, and without really looking at it and whatever you need to do. And for me, I just hoped and prayed out on the road. I said, I have to figure this out because, there's so much in your day-to-day life that you can push aside and just go, oh, I'll do that later because I've got to make the grocery list, or I'll do that later because I've got to get this assignment done, or I've got to drop the kids somewhere, or I've got this friend thing, or there's always something. But when you have this gapes of time on your hand, because it's always taking the cheapest route, so now it's really long. And I would write about how I was feeling. It just, honestly, my journals were just filled with a whole bunch of crap, but they were they were they were just, repetitive and just, oh, I'm just like, wow, okay. But through all of those nuggets, there was a story, right? And it was about, for me, the work came. Even now, I find writing these so healing too, in terms of going, oh my God, I didn't realize that at the time. And it just adds to the fulsomeness. And I wanted to write these stories for such a long time, but they were so personal and so
Hard.
uh, hard that I
Yeah.
did need the time and the rear view mirror action to happen, so that I could put space between it and be sort of different, to be able to reflect and go back and go, okay, and have the maturity to apply to the overall thoughts of how the story comes together, but to be true to the person I was then, and just have all the dirt in terms of what truly happened in there. And my goal was to have the reader just be putting the reader to just have the backpack and to be on the train, experience all of the things that I experienced from, I don't know, from Red Square in Moscow to riding the camel to, going on safari in Africa, to all of those experiences, to have like a front row seat and to be like smelling it, feeling it, just immersed in the story, but also to experience the growth of what I'm going to call the character, which is who I was back then,
Right.
throughout the series, because this year on the road completely changed who I am and completely changed my outlook on life and completely changed everything for me. And I definitely would not be the same person without it.
I know you've more than likely had numerous mindset shifts during this time frame. For
Mhm.
those that are out there listening, and they might be, because this began in the midst of some pretty heavy grief for you.
Mhm.
There are many sitting out there and probably listening right now that are grieving a loss of some sort, whether it's a relationship, a job, a
Mhm.
pet, a loved one, a spouse, a child, a grandchild, whatever the case may be. That's so hard.
Mhm.
And you might get stuck. It's probably easy to get stuck there.
Mhm.
What and you had the opportunity to face your grief and deal with your grief and move through it through
Mhm.
travel. For those that are sitting out there right now, some folk, they just can't do that. That's just not an option.
Nope.
Um, so do you have any, maybe like a little, I don't know, just an idea or a thought that you can share to help those folks? They might be sitting in that spot and they feel like they're stuck. They can't get past that because it just hurts too much.
Yeah, that's what happened when I first I was paralyzed. I didn't know, because I had all this. What I didn't realize, and which was very interesting, and that's was how the book one started this way as well, was I went to see a doctor. And back then, I thought, oh, I'm really tired, everything's an effort. And now if I had gone to this doctor, they would have probably gone, and here's your prescription, here you are, see you later.
Right.
But back then, this doctor looked at me and went, okay. She drew two circles and she said, right, tell me about your life when your mom was alive. And she said, one third for sleep, one third for school and other stuff, and one third was looking after my mom. So that was my typical day, right? How my day broke out. And then she looked at the second circle and said, now, after your mom's gone, what is in this circle? One third for sleep, one third for work and whatever stuff. And she said, what do you do in this third? And I said, nothing.
What a great visual. Two, my mind just went, I'm telling you, that could be used for depression, for folks
Mhm.
that suffer and live with depression, anxiety, PTSD. Two circles before and after.
Mhm.
Wow. Wow.
Right?
Thank you for sharing that. And I hope people out there listening right now, I hope that I hope you're drawing two circles on a piece of paper right now.
And having one third of your life blank is, of course, you're going to be down. Of course, nothing's going to work. What do you do with all that time? You're languishing, you don't even know it. And I tried to fill that time. She said, well, you need to fill this third. And I looked at her and I said, how the heck do I do that? I said, I don't even know myself. I don't know what I like. I don't know what I like to do. And she looked at me and said, that is what you need to figure out.
Hmm. Well, as a caregiver, I know that it's all consuming. It's
Mhm,
all consuming mentally and
mhm,
physically. And you
mhm,
do lose yourself in that.
mhm,
And you were
mhm.
pretty darn young
Yes.
doing that. And, to come out of that and just see a pinprick of light and go, holy cow, who am I and what am I supposed to do now?
What do you do now? You don't know
Right?
what you like to do. A girlfriend of mine, she spent her third looking after her father, and their father died, and she was just wandering around like a lost soul. And I said, dude, like, we need to, fill that. And so she started doing Meals on Wheels, meal prep and distribution, because she said, I really like helping people. I don't want to give that part up. That kind of filled my cup. It really worked for me. So she does that now, and she loves it. So sometimes it's a replace, but sometimes it's just to blow it up and find something completely different.
Right, right. But the key is to make sure you do something.
Well, to recognize first, right? To recognize that you've got this time on your hands. What are you doing? Like, I don't know, like
Right.
you be scrolling through TikTok or whatever. But what
Yeah,
am I doing?
recognize that you're stuck,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
you're sitting in a bit of a dark spot, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's
So
not
the
healthy there long term. That's not healthy.
No, no. So the recognition is the first thing, and then the hard work begins.
Yeah.
So I picked up the local magazine at the place, and I took a toll painting, I took a tai chi, did some dragon boat race. So yeah, I just need to find something. It was just all a chance thing, right? Just trying to figure out what I liked, and was it a different exercise? Was it something, whatever it was, to be able to sort of say, okay, I need to figure out, I need to learn how to fill this space in a way that that helps me, and for me, I tried all those things and they didn't work, and that's when I left. But if you can't leave, then it's just about digging deep, and it's awful. It doesn't have to cost money, right? Like the toll painting class was $50. Like it's not, or even you could say, okay, walks, or I'm going to walk my neighbor's dog, or I don't know, like it could be anything. It doesn't have to cost money.
You know what I do? Because I live with PTSD and I have some days that are kind of poopy,
Mhm,
to
mhm,
be quite honest.
mhm.
So on those days when I feel myself sinking, and that's how I always say, because that's how it feels, I'm
Yeah.
sinking. I'm like, oh, no, 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 Kim. I
Mhm,
grab the dog, I go for a long, I live in the country. I'm fortunate to live in the country.
mhm.
So I grab the dog and we go for long walks every single day. Every day. We're walking at least 2.5, 3 miles.
Okay.
And I read. Or in the winter time when it's cold and you can't be outside as much as you'd like to, or at least I could, I just don't want to because it's too dang cold.
Mhm,
I crochet.
mhm.
I taught myself how to crochet. There's always ways to pull yourself out of that. You just have to recognize that you're sinking, find something that you enjoy doing, and then make sure you do it. Don't let yourself sink, folks.
Yeah. I even puzzle too. I like to puzzle. You can get a puzzle at a secondhand
There you
store,
go. Yeah. See, everybody's
Mhm.
different. You all have different things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So finding something for yourself, but it's and that's where the time element comes in too. But
Hmm.
it doesn't, time does help, but it doesn't help on its own. And the recognition that there's something missing, and it's not just the person, it's the time that you spent with them, the time you spent looking after them. Sort of, there is sort of something, in terms of a gratification of looking after someone too, and knowing that you've done well for someone, and you feel good, like, okay, I've made their bed just so, I've bathed them, whatever it is, you feel okay, done a good thing today.
It's an
And
action. You're taking
yes, an
action.
action. And if you don't have that, it's hard, right? It's like, what's my point,
Very
and
easy to sink into depression.
yes, absolutely. And I
It
thank
is.
the doctor every day for being, not just shooting me a prescription and saying, okay, you need a prescription, but rather than, forcing me to look at where I was, and and forcing me to go and say, look, go and try this.
Right.
And yeah,
Yeah. Do something.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not saying drugs aren't the answer, because sometimes people need them, right? And sometimes it's absolutely what you need. But I didn't. And she was right. I didn't need them. And what I did need was someone, because I have dad and brothers. Like, I had no women in my life. There's something about this connection that women have, to be able to talk about things. Nobody talked about it. My family and we were so good at looking after my mom. It was like a full court press. Like, all of us had our jobs, and we were like a finely tuned machine. But after my mom died, everyone scattered and just went off to do their own thing, and I was left there, and we were probably all left there in our
Right.
chosen spot where we ran off to, on our own, trying to heal. And it's very, that was lonely too, because people forget. I make a point now, so I know if someone loses someone, I kind of diarize a reminder, and 3 months later I'm like, okay, we're going for coffee, or because I know it's about 3 months that people forget, and they just move on with their life, but they've forgotten that you're
Right.
still
Yeah,
you're
I've often it's interesting you mentioned that because I do the same. It's that flurry of activity when someone loses someone and it's overwhelming and that person is just doing their best just to get through the day,
Mhm,
and probably forgets everything that's happened a week later and, doesn't remember any details from a funeral or anything because they're just getting through. And
mhm,
then all of a sudden it's quiet and no one's around.
mhm,
And that's when I send cards or send an
mhm,
email or a text
mhm,
or I make
mhm.
a phone call because it's those quiet times
Yep,
afterwards that can be so hard for someone and so easy for them to sink.
yep,
And
absolutely.
I'm thinking, oh, I don't want them sinking. Or they'll just be on my mind all of a sudden. I'm like, all right, I'm supposed to call them today.
Yes, you are. You
And so I
absolutely.
do, or I'll text and say, "Hey, how you doing? Up for coffee?" And they might say, "Not up for coffee, but thank you so much for reaching out. I'm having kind of a poopy day." It might just
Yes.
might end up being a telephone call and not. Sometimes you literally can't leave your house.
No, you can't.
But
You
talking,
can't.
there's talking on the phone or even if it's just texting back and forth, it's a bit of a lifeline. And people need that, folks. We have to pull together and look out for one another. That's what we're here for. We're not
Mhm,
put on this planet to finger point and divide each other and hate each other. That's not what we're
mhm,
here for.
mhm,
It's not the
mhm.
purpose.
No,
We're here
no.
to help each other, hand up,
Mhm,
and to be shoulders to lean on and hands to help each other up and just care for one another for goodness sake. Okay, I'm getting off my
there you go.
soapbox now. So
Yeah.
as we're going to get ready to wrap up, time has flown by. This has been such an awesome conversation. But
Mhm.
as we get ready to wrap up, let folks know where they can find you and your books and anything else you've got coming up in the future.
Okay, great. The best place to find me is my website, and my name is horrible. So it's Candace, Candace MacPhie, MacPhie.com. My first book, I've got it here. I'll show you. And I promise it's not all sad. It's actually quite fun and it's quite funny,
I
but
love it.
it
Finding
does deal
color.
with it. So that's Finding Color, book one. Goes into the Greece holiday, through time in London, and then ends in Russia. So you can see my red square there. And then we go to right into book two, which takes us all through Eastern Europe and ends in Prague. So that's where this one ends. And the third book, which is coming out, so these two are available now, and the third book's coming out next March, and that deals with Oktoberfest, which is crazy, and then the Middle East. So
Oh, so
that
Germany and the Middle East.
Germany and the Middle East, and also a sailing regatta, but that's just a crazy endeavor with a bunch of Dutch folks. And then a full on travel through Jordan, Israel, and Egypt. So that was a whole different kettle of fish, and just a complete switch again in terms of the cultures and all the crazy things that happen.
What a blessing that you were a journaler and you kept track of all your travels as you were going.
Yeah, I think that's to me where the meaty bits come from, in terms of all the crazy
Oh, well,
experiences,
yeah.
or the crazy people, and just just small things. Like when we were in Russia, we kept saying, I was with an Australian girl, and we kept saying, okay, we'll have two of those, because you can't really speak and you can't touch things. Well, when we were in Russia, they were all behind glass. Like if you wanted to buy bread, it was all behind glass. It was like a jewelry store. So you had to kind of point and dance, and then the lady who never smiled would bring you something. You'd say, okay, we want two of those. And they would constantly be dumping three in front of us. We're like, what the heck? And but you had to pay for it before, and there was no way to know. And then they plop three and they'd give it to you, and you'd be like, we keep getting 3. So we went to the next time and we had this big argument with this woman and we pushed, one back and we said we wanted 2. And she goes, you want 3 because they count 1 as the thumb without even counting it. And she goes 1, 2, 3. So then we'd have to go like we wanted 2, you'd have to go like that, which is such a small thing, right? That causes so much. We'd get 3 bus tickets, we'd get 3 of pretty much everything just by doing this. So you'd have to do this because that was their unknown 1. So if you did that, they just assumed it was 3. So just small stuff.
No, I've traveled in Europe, and in each country, one little thing like you're saying that me as an American would do, and it was usually hand gestures or something that means something completely different over there.
Yeah.
Wow. Because in Germany, I offended people left and right because I'd be like, okay, just doing this. That does not mean okay.
No.
How would I know this? I wouldn't know until the person I was with, that was with me and taking me around there, that I was over there to visit. He said that that does not mean okay. You need to stop doing it. And I said, do what? He goes, you have to stop doing this because it means something completely different. And I will leave that up to everybody else's imagination, but it's not nice.
Yeah.
You learn little things like that because that's a cultural thing. Mm-hmm. And how would we know? No. As a visitor, Okay, so now we know where people can find you. By the way, that will be in the description and the show notes. So wherever you're listening or watching on Spotify, whatever, or on YouTube, go into the description or the show notes and you'll see all her links. Now, I ask all of my guests to toss out a nugget of hope to those that are listening today. So what would your nugget of hope be today, Candace?
Ooh, okay. My nugget of hope is that there's always a fresh start. So when my kids were little and I was not a good baby mom, I'd put them down for a nap and I'd say, okay, it's start fresh when they get up again. We'd have a terrible session. I'd call them sessions. I'd break my days up into sessions because I found them so much. So I'd say, okay, new chance. When everybody wakes up, new session. So I'd always say, hey, we're starting again. So I always think that there's you can just start again. Like, it's okay. Start again.
I like that it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to just start again.
Start again. It's okay.
You don't have to let everything in the past or maybe even what's going on right now define you or your life. It's okay to start over.
Yeah, just start from right now.
Yeah, fresh start. Awesome. Mm-hmm. What an awesome nugget. Love that. Thank you for sharing.
Okay.
And everybody out there, thank you so much for tuning in once again. And each Wednesday, as you folks know, a new episode is uploaded. But thank you for spending time with myself and Candace today. I do appreciate your time. I know it's precious. So thank you very much. And Candace, thank you once again for being my guest on Let Fear Bounce today.
Thank you. You too. That was very nice. Good. Thanks.
Everybody out there, thanks again. This is Kim Lengling, your host of Let Fear Bounce. Everybody be well, stay well, and above all, be blessed. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of Let Fear Bounce. Your time is precious, and I am so grateful that you chose to spend just a small part of it with myself and my guest today. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss our weekly nuggets of hope and inspiration. And remember, folks, let fear bounce because you've got this. So until next time, folks, keep your light shining bright.